QuitSmokingWeed.com, the podcast on Spotify.
You quit, your sleep falls apart, so you grab a 10 milligram melatonin, take it, and wake up groggy and still not rested. So you decide melatonin does not work. The truth is, almost everyone uses it backwards. Like, wrong dose, wrong expectation, and just the wrong job entirely.
Yeah, the reality of what melatonin actually does for post-weed sleep is heavily misunderstood. I mean, our goal today is to outline why it operates strictly as a timing signal rather than a sedative. We need to look closely at the biology to understand why a tiny microdose works infinitely better than a huge one. And we are going to draw a very honest line on what this supplement will and will not fix during the withdrawal phase.
To make sense of why a supplement is failing, we first have to look at the mechanical failure happening in the brain. Quitting a daily substance does not just reset your body to factory settings overnight. There is, well, a structural reason your sleep architecture is completely broken right now.
The biology of heavy cannabis use fundamentally alters how your sleep system operates. We really need to look at the ECS, the endocannabinoid system. This system is heavily involved in maintaining cellular homeostasis, keeping things balanced, and that includes regulating your circadian rhythm.
So it is managing that internal clock.
Exactly. When you introduce external cannabinoids like THC on a daily basis, you alter how the ECS communicates with the rest of the nervous system. THC specifically suppresses REM sleep. That is the rapid eye movement stage of the sleep cycle dedicated to dreaming, emotional processing, and memory consolidation.
And the brain considers REM sleep to be biologically essential, right?
Yeah.
So when it is suppressed night after night, the brain keeps a running tally of that deficit.
It absolutely keeps a tally. While it is suppressing that stage, THC is also essentially doing part of the melatonin system's job. Your pineal gland, which is the endocrine structure responsible for releasing natural melatonin, recognizes this external chemical assistance.
It sees that something else is doing the heavy lifting.
Yes. So over months or years of daily use, the pineal gland dials its own natural melatonin output way down. The biological imperative of the human body is always to conserve energy.
It is a biological efficiency mechanism. If an external chemical is handling the transition into sleep, the brain is not going to waste metabolic resources producing its own transition chemical. The internal factory just shuts down the assembly line.
Because an outside supplier is delivering the goods every single night. But that energy conservation creates a massive deficit when you finally stop. When you quit, two completely distinct biological events crash into you simultaneously. First, you are severely underproducing your own sleep signal.
Because the external supply is gone, but your pineal gland is still stuck in that downregulated state.
Precisely. It takes time for the endocrine system to recognize the deficit and ramp production back up. Your body physically lacks the chemical momentum to feel naturally tired at the end of the day.
You hit a wall where you lack the biochemical cue to transition out of wakefulness. But I am guessing that only accounts for the inability to fall asleep.
You guessed it. The second event is the REM rebound. We established earlier that the brain keeps a tally of the suppressed REM sleep. Once the THC is removed from your system, the brain violently attempts to cash in that accumulated sleep debt.
Oh, wow. So it is trying to process everything all at once.
The nervous system enters a hyperactive state of recovery. It forces you into intense, prolonged REM cycles to catch up on the backlog of emotional and psychological processing. This manifests as highly vivid, often stressful dreams, night sweats, and a highly fragmented sleep architecture where you wake up frequently.
You're left with a nervous system that cannot wind down properly, and once it finally does, it cannot maintain deep sleep because it is caught in this hyperactive recovery state.
Wait, so are we saying the brain sleep system is just permanently broken now? I disagree entirely with framing it as permanent damage. It is a recalibration phase. The endocrine and nervous systems are highly plastic, but we have to be honest about the timeline here. It is not permanent, but the worst sleep disruption is heavily concentrated in the first week or two. It is a period of intense biological shock. The sleep system is not going to be fixed in 3 days.
Yeah, I remember that first week being rough.
That intense biological shock in the first 10 days is exactly what drives people to the pharmacy shelf. They are dealing with fragmented sleep and severe physical agitation, so they naturally look for an immediate chemical solution to force their brain to turn off.
People want a master off switch. They grab a bottle of melatonin, treating it like it is going to force their consciousness to shut down, similar to a pharmaceutical sleeping pill. I feel like this is where the fundamental misunderstanding of the tool begins.
People constantly confuse melatonin with a sedative. It is not a sedative, it does not force sleep, and it does not shut your central nervous system down.
Because sedatives work through a completely different pathway, correct?
Yes. Sedatives typically work by enhancing the effect of GABA, which is the main inhibitory neurotransmitter in the brain. They essentially paralyze the nervous system's ability to send excitatory signals. Melatonin does not interact with that system at all. It is simply a hormone, a chemical messenger.
So it is the starter pistol for the sleep cycle, not the finish line.
Its entire function is to circulate through your bloodstream and bind to specific receptors in the brain to deliver a very specific signal. It tells the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the brain's master clock, that daylight has evaded. It says it is dark, it is late, and it is time to prepare for sleep.
It initiates a slight drop in core body temperature and prompts the sequence of sleep onset. It is a cue, not a hammer.
Which means it is highly effective for one specific problem. It works when you are lying there completely wired, taking hours to fall asleep and staring at the ceiling. It bridges the gap for the initiation phase.
If your primary struggle is sleep onset, meaning the sheer inability to transition from awake to asleep because your pineal gland is underproducing the internal cue, supplemental melatonin handles that exact gap. It manually provides the biochemical prompt to start the wind-down sequence that your body is currently failing to generate.
That is exactly right. It initiates the process when your body forgets how.
I have to ask about the middle of the night then. So if it gets you to sleep, why am I still waking up every hour?
Melatonin has a relatively short half-life in the body, typically around 20 to 40 minutes. It clears from your bloodstream very quickly. It does not stop the hourly wakings of REM rebound because it was never designed to suppress the nervous system.
Its job is finished once you cross the threshold into sleep.
Exactly. It is not a knockout pill that will keep you paralyzed through the vivid dreams or the sudden spikes of nighttime anxiety. The hourly wakings are a symptom of a highly agitated nervous system trying to process a massive backlog of REM activity. That requires the nervous system to genuinely settle over time. You cannot suppress a neurological recovery process with a simple timing signal.
I have to challenge the logic of the supplement companies here. If it is just a gentle, short-lived timing signal, we need to look at how loud that signal actually needs to be. You walk into any pharmacy, and the sleep aisle is dominated by 3, 5, and 10 milligram bottles. Shouldn't more mean better sleep?
I emphatically correct this whenever I hear it. Less works better than more. Taking those standard shelf doses of 3, 5, or 10 milligrams is a profound error in understanding how biological receptors function.
They were talking about pharmacological doses versus physiological doses here.
Yeah, precisely. The human body naturally produces melatonin in tiny microgram quantities. A 10 milligram tablet is a massive pharmacological dose that is magnitudes higher than what the pineal gland would ever release naturally. When you drop that amount of synthetic hormone into your bloodstream, you flood the brain's melatonin receptors.
Receptors do not respond well to being flooded. They tend to just shut down.
They respond by downregulating. When receptors are overwhelmed by a massive surplus of a chemical, they desensitize themselves to protect the neural circuitry. They retreat. And because you flooded the system, the massive dose of melatonin takes hours longer to clear from your bloodstream.
So you wake up the next morning, but your blood is still completely saturated with the sleep signal.
Yes. It causes severe next-day grogginess and ruins your cognitive sharpness for the first half of the day. Furthermore, introducing a massive surplus of synthetic melatonin completely stalls your natural recovery. If your pineal gland detects a 10 milligram flood of melatonin in the blood, it has zero biological incentive to restart its own manufacturing process. You actively delay the recovery of your pineal gland by taking too much.
That makes total sense. So the effective dose is actually 0.5 to 1 milligram. It is highly common for sleep specialists to recommend taking a standard 5 milligram tablet and breaking it into quarters just to get down to an appropriate level. I will link the melatonin we recommend in the description, the low-dose one, so you're not stuck cutting 5 milligram tablets into quarters.
Adhering to that 0.5 to 1 milligram range allows you to trigger the sleep onset mechanism effectively. It provides the exact biochemical prompt the brain needs without causing receptor downregulation or a chemical hangover. But, securing the right dosage is only part of the protocol.
The usage rules dictate whether the hormone will actually work. You must take it 30 to 60 minutes before your desired sleep time. And the environment matters just as much. Lights low, screens off.
Light exposure after taking it kills the effect entirely. There are intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells in your eyes that are directly connected to the brain's master clock. When bright light hits your retinas, particularly the blue light emitted by digital screens, it sends an immediate electrical daytime signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
That signal completely overrides the supplemental melatonin you just ingested. Taking the pill and staring at a phone creates a severe chemical contradiction in the brain.
Exactly. The physical environment must match the chemical signal you are trying to send.
Now that the dose and timing are correct, we have to set expectations for the rest of the night. So we fix the falling asleep part, but what about the 2 a.m. racing mind?
We have to be brutally honest here. Melatonin is a bridge for the acute phase. It helps with the timing, but it is not a cure for withdrawal insomnia. It will not touch the vivid dreams, it will not soothe the anxiety, and it will not speed up the neurological recovery your brain is forced to undergo.
It handles the first hurdle of the night, but once you are over that hurdle, you need a different biological strategy for the maintenance phase of the sleep cycle.
For the staying asleep part, melatonin pairs very well with valerian root. They target entirely different mechanisms. We discussed earlier how sedatives enhance GABA. Valerian root contains valerianic acid, which interacts with those same GABA receptors, but in a very gentle, non-pharmaceutical way.
It physically relaxes the central nervous system and takes the edge off the wired, anxious feeling associated with withdrawal. So you take 300 to 600 milligrams of valerian root 1 to 2 hours before bed to lay the physiological groundwork.
Then you introduce the melatonin at 0.5 to 1 milligram 30 to 60 minutes before bed. You calm the physical agitation with the valerian, and you provide the definitive chemical timing cue with the melatonin.
It is a dual approach for the psychologically hard middle phase of quitting.
That middle phase, often called the resilience phase, is where people need this bridge the most. The initial motivation of quitting has faded, but the sleep is still fragmented. Most people rely on this combination protocol heavily for 2 to 3 weeks. You will start to see noticeable improvement by weeks 3 to 4 as the nervous system calms down and the REM rebound loses its aggressive edge.
We have to frame the long-term timeline properly so people do not get discouraged. Truly normal sleep often takes 6 to 8 weeks.
And for heavy, long-term users, it can take up to 3 months for the sleep architecture to fully stabilize and for the ECS to return to baseline.
Once you cross that initial threshold and the natural sleep starts to recover, you do not keep taking the supplements indefinitely. You taper off after week 3 as your natural sleep recovers. Because people worry about replacing a cannabis habit with a supplement habit.
I want to reassure you that physiological low doses do not create dependency. Because you are using a microdose that mimics natural output rather than an overwhelming pharmacological dose, your body smoothly transitions back to relying on its own pineal gland. Once the internal factory is running again, you simply step back and let the body regulate itself.
The sleep architecture of the brain is essentially a complex orchestra learning to play without a conductor. It is genuinely fascinating that just a tiny microdose nudge of a hormone is all it needs to eventually find its own natural rhythm again over the coming months. For more on getting through this, head to quit-smoking-weed.com.